Greetings, Grace Point Church. I am so glad to be here today. My name is Randall Hartman. My pronouns are he, him. My wife is recording this, and her name is Jackie. Her pronouns are she, her. We reside in Kalamazoo, Michigan. However, today and this month, we're in Guatemala, in Antigua, and that's where we're at right now. So it's a thrill to be joining you online. We've been part of the online community now for a little less than a year, and we are really thrilled that we have found a place of like-minded people where we can gather together, either in person or online, to worship and celebrate as a body of believers. We're really glad that you joined us today, and we just want you to know that no matter who you are, who you love, or how you exist in this world, that you are loved and you are celebrated. Please enjoy the service.
Good morning, Grace Point. Happy New Year. Will you stand with us? Let's get into it.
You're the soul who understands the skies that made me who I am. Through the drifting sands of time, I got your back, you got mine.
If you bear a heavy load, I'll be your wheels, I'll be the road.
I'll see us through the thick and thin, for love and loss until the end.
Come on, sing with us. You carried me with you from the highest of the peaks to the darkness of the blue. I was just too blind to see. Like a lighthouse in a storm, you were always guiding me. Yeah, it's true. You carried me with you. Yeah.
From the day it all began, yeah, you were there, you took my hand. When I hurt a bit too deep, you watched me as I fell asleep. And when my head was in the clouds, you found a way to pull me out. Picked my heart up off the ground, showed me love was all around.
Yeah, you carried me with you from the highest of the peaks to the darkness of the blue. I was just too blind to see. Like a lighthouse in a storm, you were always guiding me. Yeah, it's true. You carried me with you.
Oh, we'll be sitting on the world together, watching as the day turns into night. We know how to brave the stormy weather. We're never giving up without a fight. If you should ever bear a heavy load,
I'll be your wheels, I'll be the road.
I'll see us through the thick and thin, for love and loss until the end.
Here we go. Oh, you carried me with you from the highest of the peaks to the darkness of the blue. I was just too blind to see. Like a lighthouse in a storm, you were always guiding me. Yeah, it's true. You carried me with you. Oh, you carried me with you. Awesome. Awesome. Like Randall said, you are here, you are safe, you are loved, you're welcomed, you're affirmed, all of those things. Get comfortable. We want you to take a minute to meet and greet. We call this the meet and greet. Find somebody maybe around you, somebody you haven't talked to before, and we will be back in a couple of minutes. We're so glad you're here. We love you.
morning, Grace Point. It is so good to see you. I feel like we haven't talked and seen each other in like a million weeks because of the holidays, so it's good to have you back. I've got a couple of announcements for you. They're really fast, I promise. They're not crazy. The QR code that's around has links to everything you need. It has links to all of the different forms and all of the different like pages of information. It's got everything that you could ever possibly need ever from GP is on the QR code. Oh, also, my name's Amanda, by the way. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you, Murphy. I appreciate that. I haven't introduced myself in a long time. My name's Amanda. If you're looking for ways to get connected here at Grace Point, we've got great opportunities for you. Again, all of that is in the QR code. The connection card can be used to sign up for the newsletter, get plugged in, and all the links are there too. We're doing a winter weatherwear collection for an organization called Eyes of Love. Information is linked on the QR code. Reimagine is back on January 18th. Our annual business meeting is January 25th at 7. You can check out the QR code for more information there. Common Ground is meeting today after church at the Goat. You can talk to Cassie for more information there. And our Q1 InReach is Open Table Nashville. And you can scan the QR code again for information on how to get plugged in there. That's all I've got. I'll talk to you later.
Happy New Year, Grace Point. Happy New Year. It is great to see you. Am I on? Oh, there we go. Great. It is so good to see you all. We're so glad you're here. At the business meeting that's coming up on the 25th, we will be voting to affirm 4 new leadership council members. And so over the course of the next few weeks, you're going to get to meet them and hear just a really brief snippet about who they are and how they got to Grace Point and why they're willing to serve. We have some fantastic folks who have served us and loved Grace Point so well who are going to be rolling off. And we'll talk more about that as well. And we have some wonderful folks who are going to be rolling on. Rolling off will be Linda O'Connell, Kathy Gilliland, Josh Collins, and Jason Turner. And can we just express our love for them? Some of those names I just named helped sustain and lead Grace Point through some really difficult times. And we wouldn't be here to experience this. We wouldn't have our online community, any of that, if that hadn't been for their faithful leadership over those years. We're so grateful. And I want you to meet one of our new nominees. This is Adam Mosley. Everybody say good morning, Adam. Hey.
How are you?
You're playing the bass this morning, aren't you?
I am.
Slapping the bass, sweet. Adam, can you just give everybody just like the 36,000 view of who you are and what your experience has been?
Yeah, there's no way to do that quickly, but I'm going to try. Basically, I grew up, like a lot of you, in really conservative evangelical spaces, conservative family, really conservative sort of culture surrounding me. And I lived in that bubble for a long time. And there were times, little moments, little snippets of my life where I got a taste of something outside of that and recognized that there were people who I had been told were evil, who I recognized weren't evil, right? And so, 20 years in ministry, I've had almost every type of role in churches. Pastored a church in Kenya for a few years, and ultimately came to a place where I wasn't sure if, that's unexpected, I wasn't sure if there was a church for me and for my wife. My wife and I have been married 25 years. We've gone through all this together. And in the midst of kind of free fall, found Grace Point. And that's it. That's so many of your stories. I know that. And and so that's how we're here. So we started with the online community back in 2020 when everybody was home, doing everything online. And then we moved to Nashville about a year later. And we've been part of the community here in person and still online since then.
Adam, thank you,
Yeah.
by the way. And can you just share a little bit about why you're willing to serve on our leadership council?
Yeah, and I've said this to you, I've said this to the LC, I want to do whatever I can to help Grace Point. Not just survive, but to thrive, to be able to be like as wide of a net as possible, so that people who are like I was, and then people who are in worship that I was, like that are in free fall, that are just looking for a place to land and they don't think there's a place, to let them know that there's a safe place. And so in whatever way I can help do that, that's what I want to do. And my offer to the LC was like, if what I bring to the table is needed, then let's do that. If not, I'll just keep setting up chairs and playing the band and doing whatever. I'm just happy to help.
Thank you, Adam. Adam Mosley, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Tear down the walls that are built, every wall that's been built, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you are the peace of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece.
Would you stand with us and sing
heart.
this?
Lord, I am trusting that you will be faithful to me, and all that you have, it is good. You're a generous giver, your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Over and over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Lord, I am trusting that you will be faithful to me. 'Cause all that you have is good. You're a generous giver. Your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Come, tear down the walls that are built, every wall that's been built, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you are the peace of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Oh yes, you are God. Over and over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before
Sing that
you
again, over and over.
over and over and over.
Oh,
I am bringing my heart to you with
closer and closer.
closer and closer.
You're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Come and tear down the walls that I built, every wall that's been built, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you walls that are, every wall that's been built, every wall that's been built. 'Cause you are the peace in my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart.
You may be seated. Thank you. All right. Hello again. I want to start just with a little confession about something dumb I did. Is that okay? If you wanted to feel better about yourself, I'll start by helping you. So a couple of our kiddos had birthdays this past Friday, so we had a birthday party. And we went to one of those cheer places where they have, like, the floors are a little springy and there are mats and there's a bouncy house and it's just right, like heaven for them. And for them. And so my oldest, who's 13, was racing like a 19-year-old who was there. But some kid in the party had told me that I looked 18 or 20. So I thought, I'm going to race too. And so I line up, and Cohen and I race. And friends, I'm here to tell you I won. I didn't just win, I smoked him. Now, he's claiming there was child interference, but that just sounds like an excuse, right? It was a fake race. He's been saying all that stuff. I won the race. What I didn't expect, I was going so fast. I was about to go back to the future. I was going that fast. And there was a wall in front of me, and I thought, I'm just going to let the wall stop me. It was a curtain. It was a curtain, and at 88 miles an hour, I went through that curtain and landed knee first down a pit. There were snakes back there. It was awful. I landed down in this thing, and when I got up, I immediately thought, I've either broken my knee, and then as time went on, it started swelling and bruising, and then I could feel like whatever those things are in your leg, like crawling up. I thought, I've torn everything in my knee. And the first thought I had was, how am I going to get on stage Sunday? I'm going to have to be carried. Fortunately, I am feeling so much better, and I don't think I tore anything. I think I've just got some, blunt force trauma to the knee. But I'm going to bounce back, and somebody asked me, would you race him all over again? You're exactly right. I would do it all over again. I have zero regrets. Will happen again for sure. So that's how I started my new year, was wondering if I was going to have major reconstructive knee surgery. Hopefully your new year started off better and different than that. It's so good to be in this room. It's so good to be with you online, wherever you are in the world. It's a brand new year. It's a new church year. If you follow the Christian calendar, Advent, which we just celebrated, begins the church year. We start our year when the light is the most scarce. We start telling our story. And after Advent, we move into a day, some people call it a season, some people just say it's a day, called Epiphany, which is January 6th. So there actually are good things that can be celebrated on that day, fortunately. Epiphany is really, it focuses on a couple of specific events. One, it focuses on what is known as the adoration of the Magi. So in Matthew 2, where we often have called them kings or wise men, that's actually not what they're called in the text, when they bring their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to the infant Christ. And it also focuses on Jesus' baptism, which we will talk a little bit about later. But Epiphany also means something else for us. I mean, Epiphany in the technical sense in the Christian calendar means appearance, right? It's the appearance of Jesus to the Gentiles. It's the appearance of Jesus in baptism to the world, essentially. But for us, Epiphany also means something a little more nuanced. It's sort of when you have that sudden realization, right? An epiphany is when something just dawns on you, when the light bulb goes on. We often maybe call them aha moments. How many of you have ever had one of those? Not even religiously, but like you just were doing your thing and all of a sudden something clicked for you that hadn't clicked before. The lights came on and you were like, that's what that's about. Anybody ever been told a joke and like 6 months later you're driving alone in your car and you're like, that's hilarious? It's these aha moments when something that maybe the dots had not been connected before, but now suddenly the dots are connected and the picture emerges and you're starting to get it. It's dawning on you. And really what an epiphany is, it's about learning to see differently. It's when you start seeing things in a way you had not seen them before. So we're going to do a series for the month of January, the beginning of February, called Epiphany, Learning to See Differently. And what I'm hoping happens in this series, is that you're going to hear Epiphany stories. So today I'm going to share some stories from the Bible that are Epiphany stories. Next week I'm going to share some of the ones that have been most meaningful to me from my own life and journey. And then over the next several weeks, you're going to hear from other voices who are going to come in and share some of theirs as well. You're going to hear from my friend Megan Crozier. Megan is the Pursuing Life Online. I know lots of you follow her. You're going to hear from Paula Stone Williams. Any Paula Stone Williams fans in the house? Paula is such a dear friend. I'm excited to have her. And then Colby Martin is going to be here as well in February. Anybody know Colby, who wrote the book on Clobber? Yeah, so Colby's going to be here as well. So we have a lot of exciting stories that we're going to hear. And my hope is, because this is the way it's always worked for me, I better can see my own story, and I have better lenses and eyes to see what's happening in my own journey when I'm hearing other people talk about theirs. Which is why community is so important, why being around other human beings and talking to other human beings is so important, because there's something about hearing somebody else's story, and this is their own unique journey, but somehow it helps us begin to think about our own stories and our own journey. And so my hope is that by the end of this series, what we've done is we've heard some incredible stories that have maybe equipped us a bit to have eyes to see. Because if you're like me, you probably live most of your life going, when you wake up in the morning, I almost started singing the Saved by the Bell theme song. I am so sorry. That just popped in my head. Just popped in my head. 80s, 90s kid. But you wake up, and every day is pretty similar. You have a routine. You have things you do, responsibilities. And I don't wake up every day going, there's going to be an epiphany moment for me today. I just kind of go through. And my hope is that we have, and every day doesn't have those, right? But my hope is that we're better attuned and equipped, and our antennas are up, and we're paying a bit more attention to what maybe moments are out in front of us that can teach us something. So I want to look just at a few epiphany stories in the Bible, because, and I worked really hard to cull this list down to like 4 or 5, because I wanted to do like 30, but I thought you may have plans later, and I don't like to assume. So I want to look at 5, and I'm not going to read you every story. I'm just going to kind of tell them to you. And these are 5 stories that for me have become really, really meaningful and have shaped my own journey a bit. And I want to begin with a story about a guy named Jacob from Genesis 28. This guy Jacob, when we meet him in Genesis 28, he is on the run because he has angered his brother Esau. If you know the story, Jacob and Esau's older. Jacob, they're twins, but Esau's the older, which means in the world that they lived in, that Esau would get a double portion of inheritance, a blessing from his father that was so central to, in their mind, words mattered and had power, which they actually do, but that this would somehow set him up better in life. And Jacob wanted what Esau had. And there are 2 different stories about how he took it, because there are 2 different sources telling the story. One involves some stew, and Esau comes home hungry and trades his birthright for a bowl of stew. Got to question that choice. Figured he could have found something else. The other story involves their father Isaac being near death and being unable to see, and Jacob and his mother tricking him by putting on goat skins because Esau was really hairy, which I love when the Bible gives us detail. Hairy guy, he puts on goat skins, they trick Isaac the father, and he blesses Jacob instead of Esau. When this happens, Esau is furious and says, when dad dies and we've mourned him, I'm going to kill my brother. And mom overhears it and sends Jacob away to go visit other family. to help him survive his brother. Now, when Jacob's on the journey in Genesis 28, we find out and the text says he comes to a certain place, but it really just means he came to a place where it was just a place. It wasn't like a place where he expected something to happen. Right? It wasn't a place where he expected a moment. And he was tired, and so he grabbed a rock and he laid down on it and he went to sleep. And while he was asleep, he has this dream. And in this dream, there's this ladder, or better, a stairway, descending from heaven to earth. And there are all these heavenly beings going up and down on the stairway, and God's there. And in this dream, God speaks to Jacob and says, look, wherever you go, I'll go with you. And someday, I'm going to bring you back to this particular land, and you're going to be back, and you're going to be home, and it's going to be okay. But wherever you go, I'll go with you. And Jacob wakes up from this sleep, and he says the exact opposite of what American Christians would say. Because American Christians would often say, wow, I was just sleeping, and God showed up. You ever been in a God showed up moment? Where something cool happened, you were like, wow, God just showed up. Don't know where they've been the rest of the time, but finally they showed up. Or church, I can remember growing up in church, and church was really good one Sunday, which I guess is a value judgment on all the other Sundays, but it was really, really good one week. And it was like, wow, we were just at church this morning, and God showed up. That's not what Jacob says. Jacob wakes up and he says, the Lord is definitely in this place. I didn't know it. Jacob's assumption is not, God showed up and now I know it. Jacob's assumption was, this place, God has always been in this place. I was unaware. My antennas weren't up. My vision wasn't focused. I didn't see what has always been true. And this was sort of a paradigm shift for Jacob, because in the ancient world, there's sort of this understanding that deities were geographically locked. There's a god of this place and a god of that place. And when these two places go to war, these two gods are at war. And whatever place wins, that god wins, right? Gods don't really cross international boundaries. But what Jacob learns in this story is actually this God is going to go with me, and going to when I cross from this geography to this geography, this God's not gonna just hang out here waiting for me to come back. This God is everywhere. This God is going to journey with me. It's an epiphany moment where Jacob has this understanding. God is actually way bigger than I thought God was. Anybody else had one of those moments when you sort of come to this, I've been keeping the divine in this little box, and the divine's going, there's a box? All right, it's not that you need a bigger box. You do not need a bigger box for God. Throw the box away. Recycle it, but get rid of the box. Right? That's what Jacob learns. It's not God who shows up ever. It's always us. There are no God-forsaken places. There are people-forsaken places in the world. And the one who needs to show up in the world is not God, it's us. There's another story about a man named Moses. And Moses is similar to Jacob in that Moses has been on the run because Moses occupied a really interesting space in the world. Moses was a Hebrew, which at this point in history, the Hebrews were enslaved by the Egyptians. And yet also Moses, by there's a whole backstory, but Moses ends up being raised by Pharaoh's daughter. So he's a member of an oppressed people, but he's growing up in the palace in luxury with power. And one day Moses sees one of the Egyptians mistreating an enslaved Hebrew, and he kills the Egyptian and buries him. But then it comes out, people find out, Moses decides he has to flee to save his life. And so he runs into the desert. He ends up meeting some people, getting married, and he's working for his father-in-law. He's shepherding, taking sheep around. And in this one particular story, Moses is taking the flocks on a mountain, and it's a spot maybe that Moses has been by so many times. You ever been so on autopilot that you have the same drive all the time? You get there, and you're like, how did I get here? Anybody ever have that happen to you? You pull into the parking lot, you snap out of your trench, you're like, what? There was traffic. I turned left. I made decisions. Remember none of them. And is that just me? Like, that's a real thing. And I just imagine that you get in your routine, you take the sheep to this place, to that place, and who knows how many times Moses who's been by this, but at this one particular moment, he sees this bush that is on fire, but it's not burning up, it's not being consumed. And curiosity gets the best of him, and Moses walks over to this place, and a voice speaks to him. It's the voice of the divine. It says, Moses, take off your shoes. The ground you're standing on is holy. And of course, the conversation since this story was written has been among teachers and rabbis is, was the ground always holy? Was the bush always burning? And it's just this moment Moses has eyes to see and has ears to hear his name being called. And it's in this moment that Moses realizes that the ground has always, always, always been holy. Because all ground is holy ground. This whole idea of sacred and profane, of sacred and secular, it's something we made up in our desire to carve the world up. When in reality, all of creation is dripping with transcendence. All of creation is saturated in the divine. And Moses has this, and in this moment, when Moses hears his voice and he goes over, he becomes aware that he's being invited. And Moses has a million reasons why he shouldn't be the person, but he realizes this epiphany moment. I occupy an interesting space in the world, and I am the one who has to act as liberator in this moment. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to be a mouthpiece for my enslaved and oppressed siblings. What this paradigm shift is, this epiphany moment for Moses, is really unique in human history in that the ancient world sort of saw it one way, that the gods are at the top of the power pyramid, but right under the gods are the people, the kings, the rulers that the gods put into place, because the gods pick who's in charge. And if the gods appointed somebody, if you have a problem with them, you have a problem with God. And that means whatever they do, whatever the kings and rulers do is okay, because the gods put them in charge. And at the bottom of the power pyramid are essentially everybody who the kings order around, oppress, and harm. And what this story does is it locates the divine, not at the top of the pyramid supporting those in power, supporting the oppressor. It locates the divine at the bottom of the pyramid, calling for the oppressed to go free. It is a foundational shift in human history. An understanding that where we find God is not among the powerful, not among those doing harm, not among those traumatizing and abusing. Where we find God is in solidarity with the victims of trauma and abuse and harm. And maybe the fundamental mistake of Christianity in 2,000 years has been we have always wanted to locate God at the top among the powerful. And we have failed to see, even though Jesus spelled it out pretty plainly. Not a lot in the Bible's plain. I think Jesus was pretty plain on this one thing. That if you want to find God, if you want to know where the divine is active, you will always find them among the oppressed, those who are grieving, those who are hurting, those who have been discarded, marginalized, and forgotten. And when Moses slips off his sandals and realizes that the ground has always been holy, he comes to this other realization that God is on the side of the powerless, not the powerful. And that perhaps we are only on God's side when we are doing the same. There's another great story from the life of Jesus, which is celebrated on Epiphany, which is about Jesus' baptism. It's actually where the Gospel of Mark begins. The infancy stories that we have, the Christmas narratives, didn't really enter the Christian tradition until it seems like the 80s, not the 1980s, the 80s. Before that, Gospel of Mark in 70 begins with Jesus' baptism, and there's this guy in the desert named John, kind of a wild guy. He's out baptizing people as a way of showing repentance, that you're changing your heart and life, and you're identifying with this movement called the kingdom of God. And so Jesus goes out to be baptized, and when he's in the water, he has this moment where he's baptized, and he comes up out of the water, and depending on which gospel you read, the details are a little different about who saw it and who understood it, but there's this moment where the heavens are torn in two, and a dove descends onto Jesus, and he hears this voice saying, "This is my son, the beloved. In him I find joy." And it seems like that moment for Jesus was a moment, we would say a moment of understanding your calling. Anybody ever had that moment where you realize this is the thing you're going to do with your life? this moment where like, oh, this is the work I've been given. And maybe it changes over, maybe you've had a million of those, right? Like, this is my job right now. This is the thing I've been given to do in the world. It's to do this, to love these people, to show up here, to volunteer here, to give of myself, like whatever that is. But you had this sense of, I got some stuff to do in the world, and it matters. By the way, everybody has some stuff to do in the world, and it really matters. And Jesus has this moment of understanding as the heavens part, and the Spirit of God symbolized by a dove, right? Symbolized by peace, which is how Jesus is going to do this work, not as a violent military person, but as a bringer of peace through justice. This moment for Jesus was sort of where the light bulb goes on. It's an aha moment, like, okay, I know what is mine to do. In that moment, actually, Jesus immediately goes into some temptations where that sort of understanding of who he is and what he's been given to do immediately gets pushed at, poked at, prodded at, and tested. And because Jesus has this moment, this epiphany moment to go back to, he's like, no, I know what my work is. My work isn't to do all of those things. My work is to do this. Another one is this guy named Paul, who we kind of love to hate. I think it's because of how he's been understood and interpreted. And he gets credit for a lot of stuff he didn't write, by the way. Paul wrote 7 letters in the New Testament. There are 6 others in his name that scholars pretty much universally agree, based on content and language and style, Paul couldn't have written. Most of the stuff people get mad at Paul about, Paul didn't do, right? Like, he didn't write. But Paul has this moment. He has this experience, this epiphany moment that changes his life. Paul was actually resisting the Jesus movement, and depending on where you read, right, there are these stories in the book of Acts that they tell of he was going by Saul at the time. It's his Hebrew name. Paul's his Greek name. He has this experience where he experiences the risen Jesus, and he has this moment of what we might call conversion, where he realizes, I've been wrong, and I'm going to be a part of this movement now, right? Like, my resisting of this, I want to be a part of it. Now, here's what's interesting about that. If you read all 3 stories in the book of Acts, Paul tells them every time, and not once do all the details agree. And so Acts is a late text. Most scholars would say that Acts is probably not historical in the sense that it's not giving us literal history. But it's very clear that Paul had some sort of experience. My favorite way he puts it is in Galatians chapter 1. There's this line in Galatians where he says, "But God had set me apart from birth and called me through his grace. He was pleased to reveal his Son to me so that I might preach about him to the Gentiles," to the people who are outside of my tradition. Now, here's what's interesting. That's actually not what the text says. That's what the text says in the Bibles you would buy. But if you read the Bible that you might buy or that you read online, there'd be a little footnote there. And if you go down to the footnote, it says, the text doesn't say that God was pleased to reveal his Son to me. It says that God was pleased to reveal his Son in me, which is different. Now, this is why time out. This is why all translations are interpretations. Because there are some scholars who desperately want Acts to line up with Galatians, and the only way you can do that, because Acts says it was an external experience, Galatians says it was an internal experience. Well, clearly Paul must have meant 2. We just need to change the word, and we'll footnote it. But what it seems Paul's saying is that he had an experience inside of him that transformed his life. And I don't know what it was. I don't know what that experience was, but it took him from being a person who wanted to see this movement end to a person who was willing to risk his very life for this movement. There's this beautiful image in Acts, because after he experiences externally the risen Christ, he's blinded by the experience. And when this particular person prays for him, scales fall off his eyes. You ever had that experience? Where you've been seeing it one way for so long, but something happens to you, in you. And it's like scales fall off, and you begin to see it completely differently. I'm going to share some of those stories about my own journey next week, because that has happened to me more times than I wish it would have had to. Where I was so certain I was right about something. And it always had to do with usually marginalizing and keeping other people away. But because of moments of real experience, it was like scales fell off my eyes, and I could really begin to see. And then, maybe we could say it like this: Paul's epiphany moment, whatever it was, changed him from being somebody who was opposed to this work, to this message, to somebody willing to put it deeply within their bones. And then maybe one of my favorite stories in the whole New Testament is the last one. from Acts chapter 10. It's where this guy named Simon Peter has this experience where he's lived his entire life with this understanding of this is how the world works, it's clean and unclean. And he has this experience where he's hungry and he's on a roof and he's praying and he has a vision. And in the vision, a sheet drops down from heaven. And there are all these animals on it and they're all unclean. And a voice, assuming it's God in the text, says, Peter, get up and kill something and eat it. And he's like, no. By the way, I would also say no for different reasons. Like, that doesn't seem like a thing I would be good at. Get up, kill, and eat. He's like, no. I've never ingested anything unclean. I can't do that. And God in this vision says to him, don't ever call anything unclean that God has called clean. And this happens 3 times, and eventually after this moment, he's invited to the house of a Gentile. This Gentile joins the way of Jesus, and this Gentile experiences the exact same thing Peter did when he joined the way of Jesus. And he has this moment. It's really great. It's a slow burn for him on this. And after there's this big moment with this guy named Cornelius, he says, I'm starting to think, stay with me, that maybe God is like for everybody, regardless of the label I've tried to place on them. I'm starting to think that maybe God's love and embrace are bigger than I imagined. That maybe what the problem isn't that God only has so much to dole out, but maybe the problem is my imagination has been far too small. And by the way, Peter doesn't make this decision as somebody who leaves his Jewish faith and becomes Christian. What he's actually stepping into is something that has been deeply embedded in the Jewish tradition forever. This expansiveness of God's love and faithfulness for the whole wide world. If you want to turn Judaism into a religion that is legalistic and narrow, you can read that out of the text, but you're ignoring everything else in the Bible that actually talks about this God of love, compassion, forgiveness, mercy, and healing for the entire human family. That's not a New Testament idea. That is not a Jesus idea. That is a Jewish idea. And Peter, in this moment, wakes up to something that has been deeply embedded in his tradition that he has not really been paying close enough attention to. And his experience of Jesus and his experience of God awakened in him this sense of, oh, this is what our tradition is supposed to be. Anybody had that experience? Maybe you've spent your entire life as a Christian. And your entire life you were told, these people are in, these people are out. These people are going to heaven, these people, uh-oh. And something happened for you where you begin to realize, whoa. Is it possible that God's love and kindness are far more expansive than I ever gave God credit for? Look, I think that the Bible seems to me to be one epiphany story after another, right? And here's the danger when we turn it into this library of stories and songs and poems. When we turn this into like a litmus test for every experience, and we try to say, well, this says this, so that doesn't count, we fail to see what the Bible actually is. The Bible's not trying to tell us every answer to everything. It can't do that. What the Bible's trying to say is, look, epiphany moments happen. Pay attention to them. Because when they happen, everything changes. Because the truth is, epiphany is everywhere. Anybody grow up thinking that the only time God could talk to you or communicate with you or any kind of divine experience would have to happen at church? And then you came to church at a music club? And you begin to realize, whoa, all ground is holy ground. Anybody ever been sitting and watching the sun? I prefer sunsets because they happen later. But have you ever been watching the sun do what it does? And you have this sense of wonder and awe, and you're inspired, and you begin to feel like there's this creeping holiness all around you that maybe the golden rays of the sun are just beginning to illuminate, but it's always been there, and you have this experience like, wait, I'm not in church, I'm not reading the Bible, I'm not listening to CCM, what is happening? What is happening is you're waking up to something that has always been true. The ground was holy before religion ever emerged into human consciousness. And if religion goes away, the ground will still be holy when it's gone. That's how this works. And I think what these epiphany moments always, and by the way, they're not all spectacular. They're not all moments where you're like, wow, that bush is on fire. And who amongst us would not grab a fire extinguisher? Like, are we missing our epiphany moments because we're putting them out, right? But look, they're not all spectacular. Some of the most profound moments of my life are spent across the table at a coffee or with my kids, where nothing big happens. The heavens don't tear open. The dove doesn't descend. But I'm just reminded that it's all holy and that it all matters and that it's all good. They're not all spectacular. And it seems like what these epiphany stories do for us, what our own epiphany moments do for us, is they invite us to take the next right step, whatever that looks like. Just whatever that looks like. Whatever that is for you. I don't know what that is for you. I don't even know sometimes what that is for me in the moment. But it's just about the next right step. It's not figuring out your life for the next 10 years. It doesn't mean like you did what I did in youth group, which is you got really on fire for the Lord and you got rid of all the good music you had. Anybody else have that 90s experience where you're like, I love Jesus, I'm going to listen to For Him. Here's my Matchbox 20 CDs. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not, no. The first step for you may just be settling into your own belovedness. The first step for you may be trying to silence the voice of shame and to hear the true voice. And what the real voice says about you is that you are God's beloved child, and in you they find happiness. Right as you are just now, not when you get rid of all your secular music. Maybe what the Epiphany stories are trying to remind us is that it's never static and we've never arrived. It never stops. It's not just downloading all the right information and now you're good. It's this journey, this spiritual journey, this faith journey. It's all about continuing to grow and change. It's never static. It doesn't stay the same. You've never arrived. Maybe put it like this. It's always evolving, always dynamic. It's always growing. It's never arrived. It's always arriving. The plane doesn't land. It may feel like it dips for a minute, but then right back. It's not Southwest. It dips for a minute, and then it goes right back up. I fly Southwest all the time, low-hanging fruit, and it goes right back up. And the point of the stories in the Bible are not to replace our experiences, but to help us see them better. The stories in the Bible are not to say these are the only experiences, and if you don't fit in here, you're out. It's almost like the stories in the Bible are signposts saying, like, this is what an experience like this might be like. In metaphorical language, this is what an experience might be like. But the point is always to help us see our own. And that's my goal in this series, is that in hearing other stories, in hearing others' journeys, in hearing the experiences other people have that flipped the light bulb on, that made the antennas kind of perk up, that did the thing, like that helped somebody take another step on their journey, is that as a community, we might have better eyes to see, better ears to hear, and better hearts that are open to respond. Are you with me? All right, let's pray. God, we are grateful that whatever epiphanies are, they are not just bound on paper in leather, but they exist today in us, around us, for us, through us. And our hope is that as we engage a new year, as we engage stories, as we listen, that our eyes will be opened a bit, that our hearts will be opened a bit, and that we'll begin to see how sacred and holy all the ground is. Not just the ground other people are standing on, but the ground we find ourselves standing on. Grateful for this community where we understand that it's never about arriving. It's never about being arrived. It's always about the process, the journey, growing, changing. To use a word in our tradition that's been misused, repenting, changing our minds, and embracing better ideas, better visions, better perspectives. We offer this in gratitude. And everybody said, amen.
Speak to me when the silence stills my voice. You understand me. You understand me. to me in the valley of unknowns. You understand me. You understand me. You understand me, God. You understand me. So I throw all my cares above you. My doubts and fears don't scare you, 'cause you're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you were. Oh, yeah. And I believe, but help my unbelief. You understand me. You understand me. Help me reach the faith that's underneath. You understand me. You understand me. And you understand me, God. You understand me. So I throw all my cares upon you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you were. Yes, you were. Oh, God, you're so much bigger. And I will rest in your loving hands. Leave the rest in your loving hands. Oh, I will rest in your loving hands. I will rest in your loving. Will y'all sing that with us? I will rest. I will rest in your loving. I'll leave the rest. Oh, leave the rest in your love. Feel free to stand if you want. I will rest. Oh, I will rest in your love. I'll leave everything else. Oh, leave the rest in your loving. So I throw all my cares upon you. My doubts and fears don't scare. You're bigger. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought. So much bigger. You're bigger. Oh, you're bigger than I thought you were. You're big. One more time. You're bigger. Oh, you're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you were.
Just a couple things before we leave today. This is not a post-sermon guilt trip. I just forgot to talk about giving earlier. If you want to give to Grace Point, you can do that in lots of different ways. You can text the word Grace Point to 77977. You can go to gracepoint.net/give. You can scan the QR code. And then our Venmo is at GracePointTN. Your benediction today is a poem from Minnie Louise Haskins. It's a poem that I grew up hearing at the first Sunday of the year, every year at the church I grew up at. And this is the poem. And I said to the man who stood at the gate of the new year, what is happening? Give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown. And he replied, go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way. Boy, Grace Point, we love you. We are proud of you. Have a great week.
I will rest in your loving hands. Leave the rest in your loving